We can't rely on SAF. We've got to look at technology and innovation. And I think the JetZero solution is a great way to address that.
This is the Time on Wing podcast. Welcome back. I'm Courtney Miller with Visual Approach Analytics. With me, as always, Garrick Deschavan of Collateral Verifications. Garrick, who are we talking to today?
We are going to be talking to Mary Ellen Jones, another great woman in aviation. She's done quite a bit, and so it's going to be pretty exciting to speak with her today. So currently, she is a strategic advisor at JetZero, so that's going to be cool too. And she spent a good amount of her career at Pratt, where she was the VP of, Asia Pacific.
Not just Pratt.
And Whitney, that's true. Pratt and Whitney, exactly.
And Whitney, both.
She was the VP Asia Pacific China Sales, America Sales, Global Customer Support. She was also VP of Commercial Engine and Global Services Marketing. I think she said in Washington with Pratt, which will be interesting because I didn't catch that. But she had a position at VP for the Toulouse operations for Pratt & Whitney. She was also VP Marketing and Sales for the Engine Alliance, so she got to deal with the largest aircraft largest commercial aircraft in the world, which is pretty cool. And then she was also president of the Engine Alliance, which is pretty awesome. She is currently also a board member and treasurer for Airlink. She's a member of the advisory board for the International Aviation Women's Association. She's a board member and was the previous chair for the Connecticut Airport Authority. She was the past president and board member for the Wings Club. She's got a BS from Michigan State University. Got her MBA from the Johns Hopkins University. So it's going to be great to speak with her today. She's she had mentioned, she's married, has a son. And so, even with all of that, she's done quite a bit in her career. So it's going to be really cool to talk to her today. So Mary Ellen, this is your time on wing.
Just a quick intermission before we continue with the show. We do get a lot of questions about how our listeners can support the show. And frankly, the easiest way is to continue the spirit of the show, which is just to reach out to us at conferences. But we also run businesses as well. And you can support us by supporting a lot of the work that we do. You can support the work that I do through Visual Approach by visiting visualapproach.io, where we produce a lot of research and analysis, a lot of data visualizations.
From my side, obviously, I focus more on metals, so anything that's aircraft related, if you're looking for valuations, whether it's on aircraft engines, I'm happy to help with any of those types of projects. So we appreciate certainly the opportunities to work with all of you, and we certainly also appreciate just the fact that people are willing to listen to what we have to say and enjoy kind of our thoughts and takes on what we think is a fascinating industry. So thank you.
Okay, back to the show.
Mitch, thank you very much for being on the podcast. We're certainly looking forward to speaking with you today. As we kind of always start with our guests, we love to kind of get your take on how you got started in aviation, where the passion came from. We all have that bug that we can't get rid of. So I'll let you tell us kind of where that all started.
Yeah, thanks, Garrick and Courtney. Really happy you invited me to join you today. So I got started in aviation really through a combination of necessity and luck. I graduated from college in the early 1980s in the midst of a recession. Got married right after college. I'm from New York and had gone to college in the Midwest at Michigan State. Did not want to stay in the Midwest. I married a Midwestern guy, though, who did not want to live in New York. So we compromised and moved to the Baltimore, D.C. area and really just pounded the pavement for jobs. So I wound up, fortunately, working for Pratt & Whitney / UTC in their Washington, D.C. government relations office as the assistant to the head of government relations. So that's where the necessity and the luck came in. Necessity, I just needed a job, and luck that I happened to start with Pratt & Whitney and UTC. And further luck there because I had a great boss and mentor. His name was Mel Goodweather. He was the head of government relations. And then his boss, Gene Talia, was the head of the whole Washington office. So, they saw something in me, this kind of, brand new college kid, really working as an admin. But they would start sending me to congressional hearings, asking me to report back. They would, take me into meetings with members of Congress and staff. This was the heyday. They would take me to these. There were 3 martini lunches back then in Washington, I have to say, in the 80s. So really, pushed me and pulled me into the business, and then eventually got promoted, to be kind of a junior lobbyist and then a kind of a more grown-up lobbyist, working on a number of defense programs like the C-17, for example.
Oh, wow.
I was also involved in this, obviously goes back away in the Great Engine War. That you may remember was, on the military side, Pratt was the single source for the F-15 and F-16 with its F-100 engine, and GE was knocking at the door hard. Pratt, I have to say, was getting fat and happy back then, and we put on a full bore campaign to try to prevent the competition. But as you well know, the competition won out. GE got a second source, and that triggered a whole series of events. But that did give me a lot of exposure, to senior executives in the company. The military business was based in West Palm Beach, Florida at that time. So we had a lot of those folks coming up, going to the Pentagon, going to the Hill. And then also, the folks from the headquarters in East Hartford coming down to work with the FAA, Department of Commerce. So it just gave me a lot of interaction with senior executives, a lot of visibility, at a relatively junior level, as well as, I'll call them customers, the members of Congress, the staff, the different agencies and associations. So it was a really good grounding and broadening experience for a kid, right out of college.
So you went from Michigan State to the Hill?
Yeah, as a newbie.
And the Pentagon. I'm sorry. There was that. That's amazing.
But again, mentors, right? And people who, believed in me. Because I, at that stage, I was an admin to head of government relations. I really didn't know much of anything about Washington. But they would send me to seminars. They, sent me up to the Hill. They introduced me to people. And, really gave me lots of opportunity, which, I was able to run with. So, that I emphasize the importance of mentors and sponsors to, people that I've coached over the years. It's so important, to have that boost, to have somebody really see you and support you and, build your confidence. So I was in DC for 7 or 8 years. These were the 80s, the Reagan administration, lots of defense spending. So it was a really energetic and fun job. But then I was asked to interview for a position at headquarters in East Hartford as the speechwriter to the president of the company. Now, I had never written a speech in my life, okay? But I think I had proven myself as a good communicator, written communications, verbal communications, being able to get my point across. And that's, I guess, another thing that I emphasize to people that I coach is, communications ability, succinctness, good grammar. My heavens, the nuns at Sacred Heart certainly drilled that into me. And I think that really helped me certainly make that jump. And I think it's helped me throughout my career. So that brought me to East Hartford to headquarters. Again, now I'm in, working for the president of the company and with his senior staff, writing speeches, just another great education in getting to know the company and how it works.
Garrick, when's the last time we had a bona fide speechwriter on the podcast?
We have not. We have not. That's pretty cool. I didn't realize you started more like the military side of things. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Which I never would have imagined. Right. So it's just just kind of shows again, serendipity, kind of being in the right place at the right time with the right people to guide you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, that was certainly a great education, a great opportunity doing that job. From there, I did other jobs in communications, working in media relations, which I really enjoyed because there again, I was working with a customer of sorts, right? An outside perspective. So that was really enjoyable, another learning experience. I worked, on labor relations issues when there were, union negotiations, that kind of thing. So seeing different parts of the company. I also did EH&S, Environment, Health, and Safety Communications, which then brought me to the attention to the head of that organization, who then recruited me to be the head of health and safety for Pratt. Now, and this is, I'm going to call it a career misstep. Nothing happens in a straight line. I don't think there's zigs and zabs, and sometimes steps too, right? So, and I say it was a misstep because it was a position that I didn't have a particular zeal or passion for. It was very internally focused, as you can imagine. Health and safety, very much shop oriented, things like machine guards, workplace safety, all super important. I negotiated with the union at that time, the machinists union, on a no smoking policy. And I will have to say they were brutal to me. I would go into the ladies' room after these sessions and I would cry because they were just awful. And I'd have to go out and put my game face on again.
You'd probably have a cigarette, wouldn't you?
Oh, well, I wish I had smoked. I wish I had smoked at that point. I would have taken it up.
Yeah, yeah, I bet.
That's
wow.
tough. That's the worst. Yeah.
Yeah. So I realized this was not the role for me. I mean, I took the role because I was flattered to be asked. It was a promotion. Mm-hmm. It was supervising people for the first time. So all of those good career type things you want to tick off, but the underlying foundation of just not feeling the passion for the role wasn't there. So that's been my overriding lesson, and that I share with people. You need to feel kind of the oomph in a job, I think. I mean, you can gut it out for a while, and I gutted it out for less than a year, and I just had to do something else.
How did you transition out of that?
So I was able to rely on my network within Pratt. Again, being a good communicator, and just, being nice to people, right? Valuing relationships, valuing people. So I was able to rely on that network to, quasi gracefully, I guess, ease myself out of that and into a position in commercial engines contracts. So that, again, another new field, contracts and commercial engines was, somewhat new to me as well, getting into the heart of it. And that turned out to be really my continued runway. I really enjoyed that role, supporting the sales team, right, as a contracts person, learning a lot about engine guarantees and all of the detail that goes into that, learning a lot technically. I'm not an engineer, but thankfully I certainly know a lot of very talented engineers, and I asked a lot of questions. Which, is another important attribute, I think, in any position, is to ask questions, be curious, dig in, don't you sit on the sidelines and be afraid to get your hands dirty. So then, that kind of parlayed its way into a sales position. And this was in, the mid 90s. And it was still unusual to have women in sales. I think there had been only one other woman in sales at Pratt & Whitney at that time.
Oh, wow.
I don't think she was even there anymore. And there was a position opening up covering leasing companies on the West Coast. So this was ILFC and GATX and others, And there was a lot of consternation about, oh, gee, should we put a woman in that job? ILFC can, eat you alive and so on. But I advocated for myself, and I had people advocate for me, and got the job. And it, turned into a great opportunity and, launched me into a series of sales jobs. From there, actually, I had my son right before that. He was about a year old when I took that job. So which was involved a lot of travel, of course. But my husband has been just super from day one, as far as being an equal parent. And we were very fortunate to have great childcare. We had a woman come to the house with her own child, which was just a luxury, right? To have both a caregiver and a playmate for my son at home. So that was, a super fortunate arrangement. And then after a few years doing leasing, there was an opening in the Toulouse office to head the Toulouse office, for Pratt's operations at Airbus. Actually, it was an opening at Boeing first, and I put my hat in the ring for that. And they said, oh, we already have somebody in mind there, but what would you think about Toulouse? I hadn't really thought about living in France, but boy, that sounded good. And my husband, once again, super supportive, said, yeah, let's do it. Our son was 4 at the time. So we moved over to Toulouse.
Oh, wow.
Mick, my son, went into school, started picking up the language, as he would, as a little sponge. And we were there for 3 years, did a lot of traveling, obviously, over there as a family, super easy to do. Although, unfortunately, we were there during 9/11. So while we had hoped we'd have a lot of visitors, family and friends from the States come, obviously put a kibosh on everything. But really enjoyed my time there, loved working with Airbus. Loved, frankly, some of the autonomy of having kind of my own team and my own operation over
In
there.
your own time zone.
My own time zone,
Yeah.
having some distance from the mothership was fun. But just, again, another learning experience, right? The FAL was right there. We had a team at the final assembly line. So engaged with them and just engaged with Airbus on all levels, program management, engineering, procurement, customer support. So, again, just a really good broadening and wonderful life experience. And then I went back to East Hartford. I joined the Engine Alliance as head of sales. Another cool experience working with GE, right? The dark side. But it was a really good experience working with them. And in fact, I went back to Pratt for a while. Then I came back to the EA as president for a number of years, which I really enjoyed. And again,
well, that's like the head of the UN, right?
Well, sometimes,
Yeah,
sometimes
exactly, right?
we had to be Switzerland. Yes, we considered ourselves Switzerland. But I found getting those two really strong companies together, there was some healthy competition there, right? Neither side wanted to be the one to drop the ball, especially if you're Pratt, you're working in front of GE and vice versa. So, we wound up with a very good engine, the GP7000 for the A380. Great fuel burn reliability, all that good stuff, as a result of bringing those, two cultures together. And I will say, so two U.S. engine manufacturers, one in East Hartford, one in Cincinnati, how different can they be? Really different, actually. Culture-wise, Pratt, I would say, was kind of a kinder, gentler approach to life, whereas GE was, this is still kind of the Jack Welch or the Jack Welch leftover days, right?
Yeah.
Was pretty hardcore, pretty cutthroat, hard even on their own people, never mind the Pratt people. So it was just an interesting dynamic, and that's where we did have to be Switzerland to try to meld those two. But it worked beautifully, and I stay in touch with my GE friends, still today, these years later, because we really built a strong bond and a good product.
And what was the trying to think? So I think each company was responsible for certain components, right, on the engine. It wasn't a just
right. We kind of split the engine in half, the low spool and the high spool.
Okay,
basically.
Yeah. Which that to me is always amazing because it's like you say, it's kind of like, all right, so you're going to build this half, you're going to build this half. Hopefully, when we put it together, it works as a whole. Right? It's kind of because engines are so easy, right?
Exactly. Right, the bottom of the food chain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's incredible.
So really another wonderful experience. And then I moved into different sales jobs at Pratt. I had North and South America. I had customer support for a while. I moved into Asia. So I moved around a fair amount with the Engine Alliance. I did a lot of work in the Middle East, with the big carriers over there. Never imagined that I would travel the world as much as I did and, just have the ability to experience all of these different cultures. And to allow my family, my son to experience that as well.
Yeah, which is very cool.
Really, really grateful, and never would have foreseen this career, right? I know some people, are very focused and they know exactly where they want to be in 5 years and what they want to be doing 10 years. That was never me. I had an idea of what I wanted to do at Pratt, but certainly getting into the business, I no idea what a wild and wonderful ride it was going to be.
Yeah. Now, do you think the your time in Toulouse with working with Airbus, did that kind of help you, with the Engine Alliance kind of getting created? Was that kind of having worked with Airbus already? Did that allow you to kind of have that connection, and so it made it easier to kind of go in that direction?
Right, probably, yeah, because Airbus, of course, is an amalgamation of started out as 4 different countries coming together, right, to build an airplane. And they were a big, instigator and supporter of the Engine Alliance as well, right? Because they wanted a good engine for the airplane to go along with the Rolls-Royce option. So yes, definitely seeing how all of those cultures, and people from the different countries and their own different home companies could work together. The Engine Alliance seemed a lot easier, right? Just bringing 2 U.S. companies together versus this, European consortium. And again, Airbus was super supportive of the EA, and it was really fun working on the A380. It was something new and wondrous, right, at the time. I remember even in, I think it was December 2000, Charles Champion was the head of engineering at Airbus, and he just pulled everybody together for a little champagne toast to launch the A3XX into the A380. So it's
Oh,
a special
wow.
time to
Yeah.
be there. Hmm.
Yeah, it's very cool.
So through that journey, I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm curious. You've done a lot of things. What was the most fulfilling?
Gosh, a number of things I would say. Certainly, I would say some of the things I've already highlighted. The Toulouse job was fulfilling just because I felt like I was kind of more in the middle of the action, right? Working with Airbus was a lot of fun. I really admired, the Airbus team. And having my own team over there, a mix of expats and locals that we brought together. And working on something like the A380 was special. And similarly at the EA, doing something different, having some autonomy, something unique, right? That was special also and fulfilling because we really moved the ball along. We got, some really good marquee customers and had a good product. I would say as well, my time in marketing at Pratt, I led marketing during the early GTF days. And Courtney, I think that's where we initially met when
I'm
you were at
sure, yeah.
Bombardier. So that was a really uplifting time, right? Pratt was being really innovative, and we were engaging customers and dispelling, doubts and untruths that were out there about the whole geared fan concept.
And I just want to be clear, since we're recording, put this on the record. Medge's most fulfilling time was when she met me. Did you hear that, Garrick? It was pretty explicit.
I think I missed that. I think most, yeah.
You picked up that subtlety. Yes, I tried to slide it in there, Courtney. You caught me. Yeah. And I'll say one other fulfilling time, which may sound weird, but it was during COVID. Which was obviously a debacle for so many reasons, and certainly for this industry. But I felt a responsibility to my customers and my team during that time. That was, it was so difficult. So wanting to keep my team pumped up, we're working from home. We had Asia. We couldn't travel there, so we're doing a lot of Zoom calls at night because of the time differences. And then, you're slugging it out during the day. With, Pratt again on Zoom, looking to get deals done or support for the customers. Pratt did the right thing going in, doing a lot of retrofits while airplanes were down on the GTF during COVID. So, managing through all of that, it was certainly a dark time. It was a burden, just being on the phone all the time and, trying to reassure customers. But at the end, we did a lot for the customers. And I think the team felt good about that. And then, of course, things came roaring back much faster than anybody could have anticipated. But I think we did well, as well as could be expected during COVID. I'm proud of how Pratt and I and the team handled it.
That's something that we're hearing. I think people are more comfortable now to say that they found satisfaction during that time because it was terrible. It was terrible. But like you said, I absolutely felt this way as well. Like there was also this, everybody was all focused on one thing. It's a big problem, but there was a really kind of fulfilling, almost like we pared down our focus to kind of this collective thing. I know right. Darren Holst from Boeing mentioned a lot about that, about how they worked with the team, and it was just kind of this. You don't know it in the moment, right? It's terrifying.
In the moment, you're just right. You just feel like you're drowning. But we were, like you said, it was a collective. Everybody was in it, right? So you felt this, I don't know, camaraderie of sorts. I guess
you really did.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's I think that was the big takeaway. I think even at the beginning, right, in terms of there was that lull of you don't know what's going on, nobody knows what's going on, and then to me there was a shift of like we should talk to people more often,
right.
So that we can kind of talk through things or hear about other things that are going on. And that creates that collective of like, oh yeah, so what are you hearing? What do you guys think about this? And then all of a sudden, it's not just you kind of going, oh my God, I don't know what's going on. It's more like, no, everybody else doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
And so how do we get past this?
How long it's going to last.
Yeah,
exactly.
right. Yeah.
And what happens next. Yeah.
It really brought a lot of people together.
Right.
Which was, one of the, I guess probably one of the better things that came out of that, right? Where you're definitely willing. I think people were more willing to do things for others during that time than, because all of a sudden it was like, oh, do you need help? Yeah. How can I help? Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you put everything else aside because you're like, you know what? We're stuck here anyway.
Right.
So it's not like I have other things to distract me. How can we help other people and go through this together? So and
the customers, I felt for the airlines. Gosh, they were laying people off. People left the industry. Right, it was hard to get them back. So it's I really felt for the customers, for the people, and so staying in touch with them as much as possible was meaningful.
Yeah.
You couldn't always do what they asked for or what they needed, but you could try, and they knew that we were working to support them.
Yeah. And how quickly people forget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Now things, the good times are rolling. Yeah.
I would love to hear about your transition into the sales side, and how you found that, the challenges, the benefits, the surprises, whatever. It's been through my own career, it was a real challenge to go to the explicit sales side. Did you find it as challenging? It sounds like being a lobbyist is not that different from being a salesperson, but how was that transition for you?
Yeah, so I did have a lot of good training for it. Being a lobbyist, government relations person, yes, you effectively are in sales. You're making contact with people, you're forming relationships, you're looking to persuade and to present your message. So so certainly that was good training. And even in media relations, the same thing. I viewed the press as my customer, right? So same thing, wanting to get my messaging right, get my facts right, of course, too. And so very similar. So, and then being in the contracts world helped me by getting, deeper into the details of it, as well. So I could speak, more articulately about, the variety of elements that go into a sales campaign. In fact, I listened to your podcast with Andy Shanklin a while back, and I was pleased to hear him acknowledge how important the engine piece is in a sales campaign, in a technical evaluation, in a life cycle cost evaluation. Because I think, previously, I don't know how many years ago, the engines were just kind of seen as, oh yeah, they're a supplier, and you'll figure it out later. But it's become increasingly obvious, right, that the engines are so complex, and they're a big part of the life cycle cost and the maintenance cost and the reliability and durability of the product, that they are, for better or worse, I guess, front and center, much more so than they were. So getting to know those technical details, the guarantees are super important, and there are, hundreds of different guarantees, that you can provide, on engine performance. So that gave me very good grounding as well. And then it did seem maybe kind of more of a natural move to get into sales. And certainly working with the likes of ILFC and GATX and CIT was, a good trial by fire too. Those were not shy people. They're still not shy people. They're out there now still. Jumping in and doing it is what makes it fun. And then, I cover different parts of the world. So knowing that you need to adjust to those cultures, right? You can't come, swanning in as the American and just, kind of talk fast to people and say, of course, this is the way it is. It's, you need to be measured, and you need to read people and understand, the Japanese are quite different than the Brazilians. And,
So Andy Shanklin was one of my mentors on the sales side. I had many, but one of the other key ones was Chris Jones. And Chris Jones, right?
Sure. Yeah, I heard his podcast too with you.
Two of my very favorite people in the industry, just great mentors specific to the sales side, until I realized something. That British accent gets them a long way.
Oh, don't
like,
you?
That's cheating. That is
Yeah.
just straight up cheating. And you show up as American and you're
Yeah.
like, wait a minute,
I
nobody
know.
cares to listen to me.
So much fancier. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So actually, on that, right? So you covered Asia Pacific and China, right? You said so how did you approach that coming from obviously not only being an American, but also being, an American woman going
Right.
to a culture where, obviously I think the culture itself is very different, right? So how did you adapt to that to be able
Yeah.
to, kind of get heard ultimately?
Well, and I'll even kind of add a little extra something to that. When I was asked to take that job, I think it was in early 2014, my house had burned down right after Christmas in
Oh my
2013.
goodness.
So
Wow.
we had a lot going on. Just totally burned down. There was a fire in the garage. They never figured out what started it. But
Wow.
we were home. We got out. Everybody was
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the house was obliterated.
Wow. Unbelievable.
So
Yeah.
in the midst of all of that, they asked me, "Oh, would you?" And at that time, I had the Americas and I had customer support, kind of two jobs. In the midst of all of that, they said, "Oh, we're making some changes. Can you go do Asia and China for us?" So, certainly a lot more travel and just a whole new world. So once again, my husband stepped up, really took care of the lion's share of the insurance, the rebuilding, all the spreadsheets having to do with the firing company. So off I went to do Asia and China. I did have some experience because working with the Engine Alliance, I worked a lot with Korean Air
Okay.
and the Japanese airlines too, unsuccessfully with the Japanese airlines, but successfully with Korean Air. So I had that grounding, and Korea was always, and it still is, a very good partner with Pratt and Whitney. So we had that very strong bond, that relationship. So I had some of that experience going into the new role. But yeah, definitely, and China was a whole new world for me. But I did find, and there was some trepidation, being a woman. But I find, China, there were some women in senior positions at the
Yeah.
airlines, and I found too that having a title, frankly, is helpful. And I'll say too, I'm reasonably tall. I'm 5'6". I think that helps too. Just and the way you carry yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, understanding, I think, with the Chinese, you can be, pretty frank. With other Asian cultures, you need to be, a bit more reticent,
Hmm.
or, you know, just take it a little differently. In China, we needed translation a lot. I mean, we had a team based in China that I worked with, but, often we would have translation issues.
Mm.
So, there's that as well. But no, and the Chinese, very, very hospitable, some, dinners and
Hmm.
camaraderie and, very friendly, and open too. So, ultimately people are people, right? You need to kind
Right.
of
Yeah.
measure how you deal with them and understand the culture. You don't want to put a foot, in the wrong place, but ultimately people want to be respected, right? They want to be
Sure.
valued,
Exactly. Yeah.
and they appreciate, obviously, honesty, right? And that was something, you go through in any company, in sales or any position. There's going to be, good things that happen and bad things that happen. The products are complex; they're not perfect. So owning up to that, and having that credibility is super important as well. That gets you a long way.
Hmm.
You mentioned something early on that piqued my interest because it was a challenge that we had, childcare.
Mm.
And it was a real challenge for us because you don't think about it until you have to. You just have to. How, do you? I'm not sure exactly how I want to ask this question, but I guess frankly, it's: do you think you would have accomplished what you were able to accomplish had you not been able to solve that? Again, it's a relatively short period in the career, but it's at such a critical
But
point.
it's a point in your career when you've got a lot of momentum theoretically, right? If
Right,
you're in
right.
your, in my case, I was in my mid 30s when I had my son, but you're in that late 20s,
Yeah.
30s when you're really, trying to rev up. So I tell you, no, between the combination of having that really reliable childcare and a
Hmm.
super supportive husband, no, I absolutely would not have been able to put as much focus on the career and the customer and my team, as I have. You always strive for that balance, right? But sometimes I mean, it's not a day-to-day balance. It's more of a week-to-week or month-to-month, I think, right? Sometimes, you really have to focus on the family. Sometimes duty calls and you really have to focus over here on the work. But I think, hopefully it evens out in the bigger picture. But on a day-to-day, it's probably not. But I'll say too, people make assumptions, hopefully not as much anymore, about women with children. When I was being considered and considering the role in Toulouse, I had people saying, oh, she won't move. She's got a husband, she's got a kid, she's not going anywhere. So these were men, making assumptions about what I was going to do just based on my personal life. And obviously proved them wrong, went over to Toulouse. It was a fabulous experience for all of us. So I guess that's another thing I do say to people that I mentor is don't let people make assumptions about you. Make sure you make your wishes clear. There's not going to be a little angel that taps you on the shoulder. I mean, maybe once in a while somebody will tap you on the shoulder. But for the most part, you've got to be clear on what it is you want and make that known so that other people aren't making up your mind for you.
I think it's helpful to understand as well that guys kind of do that. We're way more obnoxious, right? So the point being that if you're not as obnoxious, like you're just not, they're not going to know.
Right. Well, and there's this view, and I think a lot of it is based in fact that women feel they need to have 110% of the qualifications for any job, right? Where men feel, if I got 60%, I can figure the rest out. And that's probably the right approach, right? To say, hey, look, I think I can do most of this. Yeah, I'm happy to learn more. I know I can learn more. Women, often feel, I think, that, oh gosh, I've got to be perfect. I've got to know everything. I've got to hit the ground running from day one. And so perhaps they're more reluctant to raise their hand for a position. But I have learned from my mentors that, I'm capable of more than I initially thought I could do. And that just gave me the confidence to go, for more and bigger and better roles.
Well, I just had mention of this today, but somebody asked me kind of on the business side, they said, would you rather be a good consultant or a loud consultant? And I'm like, I'd rather be a good one. They said, that's the wrong answer. There's no reason you can't be both, right? We think that the loud means you're not good, and they're completely unrelated. Mm-hmm. We tend to correlate those two things, that if you speak up, that somehow you're compensating for something,
right? That you're a blowhard or something.
That you're a blowhard, but the two don't. If you don't, by the way, you're nothing. You're just not a part of the conversation. You're just not, because you can't be. You're not. You haven't.
Yeah, if you're waiting to be noticed, right? It's a lot harder.
Yeah,
and I've struggled with that just on the business side. Garrick knows I never say anything. Like, I'm super quiet.
Yeah, I see that.
Right.
Yeah,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I know. Nobody knows what Courtney's thinking ever. On a day, minute by minute basis every day. So, but yeah, no, it's true. But yeah.
Sorry.
I'll add something too. As you talk about fulfillment, I've been able to do some other things outside of my day job. And again, this is another message I try to impart to folks that I mentor is, look outside, to the extent that you have the bandwidth and the interest to other elements. I got involved in the Wings Club. In fact, Kevin McAllister, who was head of GE sales at the time, called me up and said, hey, we look for some folks to serve on committees at the Wings Club. Would you help and, join and maybe head the programs committee or participate on the programs committee, which lines up the speakers. So that was kind of a cool thing to do, to get involved in the Wings Club, mm-hmm. Which I've always, admired and enjoyed going to their lunches. And eventually, I did other roles and became president of the Wings Club, which was a lot of fun. And that is, it became a charitable 501c3 organization, doling out, hundreds of thousands of scholarships to students who want to study aviation. So that's been a really fulfilling element. Things like Airlink. I'm involved with Airlink, which uses aviation to provide humanitarian goods to people in need. I'm actually now the treasurer. Now, why you would put a salesperson in charge of treasury, I don't know, but shows how
Sounds
creative
dangerous.
they are.
Yeah. Spend.
I never had that luxury at Pratt. I'm the treasurer at Airlink, and just see all the good work that they do, right? Working with key airline stakeholders and others just to bring, goods and people where they're needed to all these disasters around the world. I was on the ISTAT Foundation board, serving on the humanitarian committee. So just having these different opportunities to see the good that aviation does, right? Not only is it a great career, and not only does it bring people together, bring commerce together, but it does a lot of good. Aviation is, I think, like more than 4% of the world GDP is attributed to our industry. So there's a lot of jobs associated with it, a lot of productivity, obviously a lot of innovation, technology. All these reasons why it's such a cool place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd love to hear your, obviously your transition now into, some of the stuff that you're doing with JetZero, right? That's a pretty exciting, there's a lot of discussion about some of the stuff that they're doing, but I'd love to kind of hear how you moved into that and what's going on there.
Yeah. So I retired from Pratt at the end of 2022. Went out, I think, with a bang. We had just won the Qantas deal earlier that year, which was huge for Pratt to get back into Qantas. They ordered Neos and A220s, with the GTF. And that was a campaign that kind of started during the tail end of COVID. So a lot of that was Zooming with, Australia. We would have to Zoom with, Qantas in Australia, Airbus in Singapore, Airbus in Toulouse, and then being in East Hartford on the time zones, we were the ones calling in at 11 o'clock at night. But it turned out to be ultimately a successful and really well done campaign. So at the end of the year, I retired after more than 35 years with the company. And then, wanted to take some time off, figure out what would come next. Knew I wanted to stay connected to the industry and, certainly still with the Wings Club, with Airlink. I'm on the board of the Connecticut Airport Authority, which has also been really interesting, learning about that side of the business. So keeping those things going. But then some friends of mine were on the advisory board at Airlink. I'm sure you know Warren Willits and Nina Johnson and Barry Eccleston. So they talked to me about JetZero, which is developing this blended wing body airplane, which provides, promises super, fuel efficiency, aerodynamic efficiency, coming from the airplane, right? All of the efficiencies we've seen over the years have really come from the engines, right? The significant steps forward, like the GTF, like the LEAP, and so on. That's all been the engine, right? The airplane, you put some winglets on, you trim some aero here and there, but the double digits have been coming from the engines.
Boeing and Airbus would disagree with you, but I would not.
Yeah. I think you kind of look at that.
Let's call a spade a spade.
Look at the facts, Jack. Yeah. I mean, especially in recent decades, right?
Of course.
The basic
They're
design
the
of the
same
airplane. Yeah, right. I mean, the airplanes have been around the same design for decades. So this is now a step to do something quite different, rely on the airplane to get you that efficiency and that fuel economy. The founders, Tom O'Leary and Mark Page. Mark is really a legend in aviation. He spent his time at Douglas working on blended wing body there, moved to Boeing, tried to further it there. They weren't interested at the time, so he left and did other things. Tom comes from the tech industry. He was an early Tesla guy. He's been at Beta Technologies, so he knows, that part of the business. So putting those two guys together, along with, a wonderful team of innovators, really creative thinkers who've come from other parts of the industry. Lots of folks from Grumman. From Gulfstream, Northrop, SpaceX. Pratt. Just people from all over, Airbus. With Barry. So it's just been really kind of energizing working with that team as a member of the advisory board. We meet regularly. We go out to their facility in Long Beach. They're right there at Long Beach Airport. They have a hangar out there with a cabin mock-up that is tremendous. When people go see it, it sparks all kinds of creative thinking. Because when you look at that blended wing design, right, obviously the interior is much wider, much broader than the usual tube and wing. So it opens the door for all kinds of innovations with regard to cabin seating and passenger comfort, to the extent that airlines care about passenger comfort, which I hope they do still. So
it could be worse.
Yeah. Well, and right, we'll leave it at that. But just so that's, the cabin opportunities, the passenger comfort, the fuel efficiency. So it's the economic and environmental benefit, and just the energy behind doing something different for the industry and for the planet too, right? So that's been, just like I say, really energizing, and really loving working with my fellow advisory board members too. These are folks I've worked from afar with, in my position in Pratt. And now I get to collaborate with them.
I think that's wonderful. The JetZero, of course, has been a topic of conversation for really the past couple years. I think they've
right.
really kind of just continued to progress. But at ISTAT this year,
yes,
there was just a lot of talk, and the conversation usually goes like this: oh, there's a new OEM. They're building, I don't know, pick your favorite, electric, hydrogen, supersonic, I don't know, whatever. And everybody's like, yeah. No, I'm sure they are. This year it was like, oh yeah, JetZero's there. Like, oh really? Oh, this is interesting. There's a very different. I mean, this certainly isn't just my my observation. People are talking about, wow, not only are they really interested in kind of what JetZero is putting forward, they're interested in how many people are also interested.
Okay.
There's I don't know, the groundswell is probably a bit strong of a term, but
I like groundswell.
Okay, you would. You've been in media, see? Yeah. You've been a speechwriter. You would know.
Yeah.
But the idea, I think there's also something there in not just on what JetZero is doing, but separating the wheat from the chaff when we're talking about all these new technologies. And there's so much. eVTOL this, how many of those? There's like 300, somebody counted it at some point. So we're constantly being inundated with promises. And separating that, it's a real challenge for anybody in the industry.
Definitely.
How does, as much as you're involved, what's JetZero's approach to that? Because they also have not been what I would call loud. They've just kind of been doing work. And by the way, this does a thing. Right.
Yeah, so they've been measured. They were in stealth mode for a while until last year, kind of middle of last year. And even, stealth mode was new to me, coming into a startup, right? But they've been measured because they want to demonstrate the heft at each step along the way. So I think the big unveiling came that the team went to the Paris Air Show last year, had a lot of customer meetings, a lot of media meetings also, and investor meetings. And then shortly after that, last August, the Air Force announced a $235 million contract award to JetZero to develop a tanker demonstrator. So that was really kind of the big unveiling, I would guess, and certainly a big shot of credibility and confidence in the company. Because the Air Force, certainly realizes more and more that the, Asia Pacific theater is where, a lot of the threat lies. And you need really long legs to be able to support any activity over there. So now all of a sudden, fuel efficiency becomes more important and more relevant. So they really liked the JetZero approach to that fuel efficiency, having this this design, and the demonstrator will be built by Scaled, which is a Northrop, entity. So, and obviously Northrop knows that kind of flying wing design.
Yeah.
So that's, just kind of a great confluence of money, of credibility, of strong partnership with somebody like, Scaled Composites. And then from then on, there's just been other milestones, that have been reached and that are approaching. The company is going to be flying it's like a 12.5% scaled prototype called the Pathfinder. Going to be flying that out in the desert to demonstrate some of the aero technologies, some of the landing gear technologies, which are kind of key to the unique design. And then, the demonstrator will fly in 2027, and certainly a lot of engagement with commercial entities, commercial airlines, because that's certainly where the volume is. And the Air Force would love to see that, compatibility with a commercial product to help keep their own costs down. So it's really it's a very innovative approach. The team is just so committed. And that's something, I think that you see throughout this industry in aviation. There's just so many talented, really committed, dedicated people, and just with real enthusiasm for what they're doing and, for the promise of all of this innovation. And yeah, you talk about eVTOL, hydrogen, there's just 20, 30 years from now, gosh, things are going to be so much different, I think. Even JetZero is looking to that because, while they're going to operate with, Jet A and the SAF, certainly in the near term, the airplane can accommodate hydrogen when the time comes. And maybe just on the subject of SAF, the IATA AGM is coming up, right, in early June. And certainly IATA had launched, I think it was 3 years ago, the whole Net Zero Challenge. Their view at the time was that 65% of that improvement would come from SAF, and I think only 13% from new technology. But I think, we're starting to see how much more difficult the SAF solution is going to be. It's going to take longer, no doubt. It's going to be expensive. So we can't rely on SAF. We've got to look at technology and innovation. And I think the JetZero solution is a great way to address that.
It's definitely, I'll call it unique. It's not necessarily novel, though, right? We have, the blended, we called them flying wings in the past, and it's a little bit different than that. But as I look at these new technologies, there's always, with each of the new technologies, there is this needs to happen to unlock it. So with SAF, the infrastructure, the ability to just grow, create the SAF. With electric, it's battery density, it's energy density. With hydrogen, it's the cryo. That's still out there, right?
So and the infrastructure,
and the infrastructure, absolutely, all the same things. There's always kind of that one thing that unlocks it for that new technology. What is the one thing that needs to be unlocked for JetZero to be successful, not as a company, but as a technology?
Well, I think, frankly, investment, right? This is a capital intensive industry. So the team I know is very confident in the technology. Mark Page and his colleagues have been working on this for 30 years, right? They know it inside and out. So I think very confident in the technology. What it takes, and Boeing and Airbus have really not focused on this, right? I think Airbus is looking at some version of it, maybe in the future for their Zero E. But it's not a priority because these guys have thousands of airplanes in backlog. So why would it be a priority right now? So making sure we can secure that investment, so that we can, get into rate production, that we can, build these huge composite structures, have a good, manufacturing location, hire all of the people we need. So that's really, I think, the fundamental. The team is extremely confident in the technology. And there are some things with the composites that we brought some experts in from SpaceX and elsewhere to address for us. So as long as we can secure that investment, there is very high confidence that this airplane can really make a big change.
Is there if I look at all the other competing technology, I'll call them competing, they're not really, but all of the other new technologies we're talking about, one thing that I think they all have in common is they work better. They don't scale well. So they work better on the small side first. eVTOL, obviously. Electric doesn't scale all that well up into the larger aircraft. Even the RISE program is really kind of a medium narrow body at the largest. Right.
And the UltraFan is looking at a larger,
right,
like more of a wide body, right?
You're absolutely right. Am I wrong in assuming that the opposite is true for JetZero? That there's actually it actually scales better up than down? Is this a potential large long haul wide body solution on the front?
Yeah, right now it is aiming for the the middle of the market where there's
Okay.
really no entrant, right? We've seen, certainly Boeing talk about a middle of the market airplane that hasn't
Which
yet
is
materialized.
big.
Yes, it's about 250 packs. 4,500 to 5,000 nautical miles is kind of the
Yeah.
sweet spot for JetZero right now. But it does have the ability to scale. The team has developed what they call a Y plug. So with a tube, of course, you can just kind of insert, a section and grow the airplane. We'll have to give you a demonstration of the Y plug, how that fits. But it adds certainly capacity. It grows the wing a little bit, but the two then balance each other out, to continue with that same aerodynamic efficiency. So it's a
I'm
very
fascinated.
clever approach. So yeah, no, we'll get you aside and both of you guys
Write that
and
down,
talk
Garrett.
to you. Yeah,
You
come out
said
to
that on
Long
tape.
Beach. Yeah,
I was in
come
Long
out.
Beach 2 weeks ago.
Well, come on
To
back.
the comment on Long Beach, when you land in Long Beach and you see the Fly Douglas jets and you know the history
Yes.
of that airport, and I love that JetZero is out of Long
Is
out of
living
Long
that
Beach as well.
heritage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so no, would love to host you. You'll be gobsmacked at the cabin and just all the other technology the team can
I'm
share.
down for a good gobsmacking.
All right.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
But may I also recommend, free advice, that could use kind of an Engine Alliance ish engine. I mean, you could run the whole thing. I know a former president.
Do you?
I
It's
do.
available?
She'd be great.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, because the airplane is new and innovative, the team is aiming to keep the rest of the systems as much commercial off the shelf as possible.
Love it.
So right. So you want to de-risk as much as possible. Recognize the fact that the aero improvements are coming from the airplane, and let's support that as much as possible.
Yeah, and that's to me. So all this stuff is why people don't leave aviation, right? I mean,
Right.
we all
There's
see
always
people at these
something.
conferences that you're
Yeah.
like, man, this person has been here for like ever. Why
Yeah.
don't they just retire and go
Yeah.
away? But
They're
no,
not saying
because
that about me, Garrick, are they?
no,
No,
not
well-
yet.
No, definitely not.
I mean, they'll definitely be saying that about me in like 5 years' time. They're probably like, Garrick really should go.
Yeah, 5 years, Garrick.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe they're saying
Definitely
that
not
now.
today.
I don't know. but it's true. Like every time you're like, okay, you know what? A couple more years and I'm done. It's like there's something else that comes up where you're like, oh, I want to see where that's gonna go. It's really interesting. That the JetZero stuff is really cool.
Talk about blended wing, eVTOL, hydrogen, Rise, UltraFan, next gen GTF. Gosh, there's so much more to come, right? We're not nearly done. There's just lots of innovation, lots of really creative, smart people.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier in the conversation multiple times, and in fact, I think I even agreed verbally, but the progression over the last couple decades in commercial aircraft, the efficiency is coming largely as a result of the engines, and how JetZero is different. Are you joining the dark side, Medj? Is this?
Oh
Are
no!
you now an airframer?
I'm an engine guy at heart. I will say always, and that's one reason I think they asked me to join the advisory board. I'm an engine guy, I'll say, and really a customer guy also. I really enjoy working with the customer. So yeah, and you get all of that with a company like JetZero, and just that having been with Pratt with big corporation for all my career, now working with a startup like this, so different, right? I mean, the culture's different, the energy's different, the ability to get stuff done. It's just really interesting to be part of. Some stuff I don't quite understand, and other stuff I'm like, wow, yeah, why didn't we ever do that? So it's I'll just say energizing again.
So the engine business model has evolved, I think is a way of putting it. Yeah, it's evolved over the course of your career, for sure. I'm not calling you old at all.
Thank you.
I'm just saying that, wow, you've got a lot of experience.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it's that I mean, in the context of JetZero, right, where we're now starting to shift back to the airframe, which needs to happen,
Mhm.
to carry your own weight, tube and wing. There are better ways to do it. Now, can we manufacture it? Right, these are all things that are being
Right.
resolved. But it's that engine, the model of the business model of building engines, how it's evolved through the JT8s, through the V series and IE, into the GTF. How, I guess, how does that one evolved? But how do you see that evolving into the future? Is it more the same, or have they kind of caught on that, wait a minute, you're taking a lot of value that we're providing?
Right. Yeah, no, certainly, to get on to the Neo, right, with the GTF, that was a big bet on everybody's part, on Airbus's part, on Pratt's part, certainly. And Pratt needed a boost right then. Pratt did not have great
Hmm.
market share at that time. It had elected not really to participate in the wide body market anymore. Um, so Pratt, put a lot into the GTF, and rightfully so, and it's done wonderful things. Obviously, it triggered a mass of other things happening, right? Boeing really resisted. They did not want to do anything on the 737. Lessors, I remember vividly, did not want to shake up the world. They liked things just the way they are, right? They were at the time with just the V and the
They don't ever like
CFM.
to shake up.
No, so we had a lot of headwind, and pushed through it because Pratt had a really stellar product, and Airbus took a bet on it, and then, like I said, just really triggered a whole lot of things. So certainly that demonstrated, if anyone had forgotten, I think it reminded people how critical the engine is to the whole landscape, right? The airplanes get a lot of the glory. The airplane OEMs are certainly front and center. Um, but now I think people have come to appreciate a lot more the value, and the implications of their engine selection.
So hypothetically, if an airframer, we'll call him, just off the top of my head, Bo Bus. I don't know,
Okay.
just a random OEM says, "Look, we want to build a new aircraft program, but we need kind of a game-changing engine technology to make the economics work." How willing do you think the engine manufacturers are today to make the same kind of bets they made in the past, in the same business model, or is there going to need to be kind of a change in how that's done going forward?
Well, I think certainly ideally, and I don't know how blue sky this is. Engine companies would like maybe more of an airframe investment, right,
Hmm.
rather than just taking orders from the airframer. Certainly engine makers have always worked with partners, right? It's too big of a bet for any one company. GM, GE, and Safran have the CFM enterprise. Pratt had IAE and Rolls had IAE. And even on other nameplate engines, the OEMs have their partners in MTU and JAC and others. So there's always been the need for multiple company investment. But yeah, you would like to see, like I know the engine companies would like to see the airframers take a bigger stake. Now that, would then mean maybe you're sole source, right? Which the airframers and maybe the customers don't like. So you can quickly kind of talk yourself out of that line of thinking, I think. But, it is billions of dollars to develop a new engine. We've seen that. And especially as you push the bounds of technology, they don't work perfectly right out of the gate. So there's retrofits and there's work to be done, and there's customer disruption sometimes. So yeah, it's all super expensive. And as you probably know, the business model traditionally has been that the engines are heavily discounted up front.
Hmm.
And then, more and more, for the right reasons, airlines have signed up for, fleet hour agreements, over the course of 10 or 15 years. And so eventually the engine makers get their money back. But boy, there's a big dip before that curve starts going up. And
But
that's hard to swallow.
doesn't that work against the new design. For instance, if I put a new winglet on an airplane, I'm like, and I'm going to put a new engine and I'm going to sell a bunch of these airplanes. And if they come to me as an engine OEM, one of the thoughts that might be running through my mind is, wait a minute, you want me to invest a bunch of money to make the engines I make money on today obsolete.
Right.
I know look, we're all, technology progresses. We're all very interested in technology, but this is what I mean by that business model. It's the cash flow being so back end heavy, and the engine OEMs going through what they're going through and the value that they've brought. Is there hesitancy to jump right back out and do that again? Well, and sacrifice the cash flow that you need to make the first one work.
Right. So there's a cycle, right? Yeah, you can't cannibalize yourself too soon in the cycle. It just doesn't make any sense. And unlike the airplane makers, the engine makers really live off of that maintenance stream, right? It's not nearly as important in the airplane business model. So there's kind of an inherent clash right there in the financial calculation. But the engine companies are perfectly capable of standing up with themselves and saying,
sure,
this just doesn't make sense. And we've seen that, as Airbus has pushed for higher production rates, both Pratt and GE CFM have pushed back and said, look, our supply chain can't handle it. We can't set ourselves up for failure. So there are different, objectives and different business models at play here. And, you obviously have to, make sure you stand your ground for what's the right thing for your company and your shareholders, while also making sure you are busily investing, behind the curtain so that you're not left behind in a competitive landscape going forward. And we've certainly seen that play out, in some of the OEM situations today. But yeah, and, all companies hire strategy people and market forecasters to figure out, when is that next cycle? When is that next technology going to be ready? When is it time to pull the plug? And then you have surprises. Certainly COVID, and obviously shook things up. And then the fact that things came back so fast, and we've had supply chain issues and we've had durability issues. We're finding now that airplanes operated by PW2000s and PW4000s are more in demand because there's just more lift needed to fill the holes created by some of these other situations. So those airplanes and those engines are having, kind of a new lease on life that certainly hadn't been forecasted probably 5 years ago. So yeah, you have to stay on your toes in this business.
I find that absolutely fascinating.
It is. It's really interesting, right? Because it's kind of a, so you look at all the different, issues and the struggles that all of the OEMs are having, which, and there's no one OEM, I think that's not having issues today.
Right.
And so from that standpoint, yeah, they're all focused on, look, let's fix what we can, fix to be able to move on and, be able to generate the revenue that we thought we were going to make with these products. And so in the meantime, right, they're focused on this and they're not necessarily focused on, let's put, billions of dollars on new stuff. But yet you have other, so from the standpoint of, when you've got companies like JetZero or others that are looking for investment, right? How challenging is that when, if you're looking at, as an investor, if you're looking at putting money into a new platform or a new, technology, you're also understanding like, look, we know that these guys, their resources are focused on their current product and how much are they going to be willing to put money into the next generation of stuff.
Right.
So I don't know how much risk we want to take in supporting you when we know that you're going to have challenges, right? So how do you get past that, right? How do you kind of keep that wheel going? Because like you said, there is a ton of capital that needs to be put into innovation, right?
Right. So no, I mean, you've got to, obviously you have to have a good product and kind of a good thesis behind it, right? To even have that conversation. Ideally you can point to a track record too. Now, a new company like JetZero doesn't have a track record of its own, but its people have track records from their previous lives, right? And that gives confidence. But yeah, it's a long-term bet. And like I said, these companies hire a lot of market forecasters to try to figure out when is the right time, what is the right thing to be ready with, and how can we kind of invest our own money? How do we amass our own money to make sure that we're not going to miss out when the time comes? We hear lots of companies saying, oh, nothing's going to happen before 2035 or later, right? Because they are very busy paying for what's happening today, and need to put the focus there. Customers want the focus there, right? They want to make sure they're taken care of today. And yes, I definitely want the next new thing when it's ready, but don't shortchange me now for some pie in the sky. So it's a big tug of war, within all kinds of companies as to, how do you allocate finite resources to the present and to the future?
So I have an idea. This is an idea for Rick Durlew. Excuse me. Call him up. Say, hey, Rick, listen. I think you should invest. Pratt should invest in JetZero. Why? Because they're the only potential airframer that's actually pulling their own weight. Kind of literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, listen, we've been funding effectively, these airframe programs, and we want to partner this time. I don't know. You don't want to burn Boeing and Airbus, right? But the whole idea,
right.
The whole idea, though, and this is what's so unique about JetZero. It shouldn't even be unique, but it is. It's the only kind of potential future platform that doesn't rely on a to be determined propulsion system,
right.
Or
doesn't require a $2 billion engine investment. Yeah.
Or a major like battery density or cryo hydrogen, right. And I mean that gives me nightmares at night for the guy trying to figure that one out. But right, like that. So anyway, that's free for Rick.
More free advice.
Yeah.
There
you go.
I'm sure he's listening.
You can just suggest that.
Yeah.
But it highlights JetZero, right? And why it's different. There are challenges, but they're very different, right? We're talking. I'll tell you. So the best pushback I've heard on JetZero is, we're not going to have gate space big enough. I'm like, seriously? That's your biggest concern right now?
Right.
Like, if that's the problem, we'll park two of these things at whatever. We'll pull up a bus. It doesn't matter, right? Like, the efficiencies you get out of this are way better than pavement.
And JetZero is anticipating being able to fit existing gate space. So, we
there
don't
you
want
go.
Infrastructure getting in the way. Yeah. No,
Wish I'd known that before.
Yeah. Back at you.
Yeah.
Maybe one other thing I want to mention too, just as part of my whole kind of career arc, is again, kind of just focusing on women in the business. I'm on the advisory board of the International Aviation Women's Association, Iowa. And I have found that to be just a very welcoming, collegial, supportive, and inspiring organization, frankly. I know there's, other organizations, Women in Aviation, there's AMWAR, a number of entities out there. But, I just want to kind of let women know, reassure women that there's a lot of opportunity out here, and a lot of places where you can kind of, huddle with other women, if you want to, and kind of get career advice or, just kind of sound things out. So it's, certainly I think Pratt has done a fantastic job of being welcoming to women and, basically all people who are interested in aviation, and I'm seeing that more and more across the industry. Certainly JetZero has some wonderful women with excellent experience in senior positions, which is really heartening to see too. So, we're half of the population. You don't want to, kind of gloss over half of the population when you're looking for smart people to move your company forward.
I just want to point out, not entirely true. You're over half the population because we do
51?
stuff.
51?
Yeah, we tend to off ourselves doing something stupid.
Yeah,
hold my beer, watch this. That's usually like.
That's true.
Right.
But you're right. So carry on. I'm sorry, Mitch.
I was just going to say 51% of the population, maybe more than that with the brains, but yeah.
Fair enough.
Wait, what?
Wait, what? But so what's really interesting about, there's a historical context to this, and that is we've seen this type of thing before. What we're going through right now, not just in aviation, around the world, we've seen something like this before, and it was right after World War II, when you had kind of these shortages. Yeah, you had a lot of men coming back from war, found their place in the factories, but the economy grew, and the labor shortages were largely filled by the other half of the population that was there, that was not even considered at that time, was not even considered a potential part of the workforce. And here they effectively doubled the workforce, right? And now we're back, and we're going to be in this for a long time. We're not going to see the kind of labor excess isn't the word, but nor is oversupply, but the not shortages. These shortages are going to be something that will define the next couple generations, because population growth just isn't what it was. So if there's ever been a time for women to not only be needed, but feel the need and the ability to get in and rise up, it's now. It's only going to get better. So now's the time.
In fact, I was at an event a couple weeks ago, hosted by the aerospace component manufacturers in Connecticut, which is a group of, a couple hundred, small to medium businesses in Connecticut that are in the industry. They're suppliers to Pratt, to GE, to Airbus, Boeing, pretty sophisticated companies. And there was a speaker there who talked about, just that there is a need for people in this industry, for skilled technicians, for people up and down the aviation food chain. And they are definitely afraid that in Connecticut and, throughout the country, that there is just not going to be enough people going into this business. Maybe not enough people, period, but also not enough people coming into this industry. So they're worried that they're going to have to kind of get more, investment into robotics to replace the people that just aren't going to be there. So it just speaks to the fact that there's tremendous opportunity out there, and the smaller companies feel it first, perhaps, and they are worried about it, about how they're going to get the talent that they need to be viable producers for the long term. Yeah,
which is, I think that's super interesting, because it's when you think about, for your everyday life, right? You go to stores, like especially in the retail side, right? You see it every day, and there's fewer and fewer people that you get to interact with,
those
right?
Kiosks and
the self-checkout, basically soon it's just there's going to be one person that's there just in case something happens. And so the mentality is, okay, so everybody is trying to get rid of people because machines can do a lot of the things. But whereas if you look at aviation, it's really the opposite in terms of like the skill is needed. The people are needed because it requires a skill level that you can't do just with with automation or with AI
and you need human engagement too. I mean, so I mentioned I'm on the board of the Connecticut Airport Authority. So I see that at Bradley Airport too, just the constant need for people to support ground handling and gate agents and, all kinds of functions.
Yeah.
So definitely. We need more and more people coming into the industry, no matter what they look like.
Yeah, well, that's it, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's not if you're interested in aviation, step forward and do what you can. It's not about your upbringing, who you are, where you're from. It had nothing to do with that, right?
Right. Just bring your brain, your curiosity, and your energy.
Yeah, right. Because I mean, that's we as all of our guests that we have on, right? I mean, everybody's so passionate about what they do. That's what it's about, right? If you have that passion, then come on in, right? Because that's we all love that.
Right. It's a big world out there.
It is, yeah.
I want to give an example, a shout out. I may have actually mentioned this before. There's a YouTube channel called Stig Aviation. Have you heard of this guy? He's a line mechanic for American Airlines. And he just he just records his job and explains, and he's a line mechanic. He's literally turning wrenches, and he loves his job. So first of all, great on this guy, because what a recruiting tool just to the industry. I mean, it's wonderful. I watch this stuff all the time. I learn a lot too. But then also, I don't get to say this often, but I'll say it today. Kudos to American Airlines for allowing that and recognizing just how important putting the idea of that being passionate about what you do is a good thing. It's not a risk.
Being genuine. Yeah.
And being and authenticity, like these are all the things that the vast majority of people in aviation share. And I just thinking of that guy, it's truly fun to watch this guy just talk about the random things that he sees on the line. But the technicians especially, like there's just a critical need for technicians kind of around the world. And we talk about the MRO shortages and supply chain. It's all part of the labor, and aviation, just as you said, is just more and more susceptible because people still are required. We're going to be.
Right.
Yeah, it's just I think the maybe the hesitance is it's not a quick path, right? For a lot of the skill that's needed to do certain jobs. Right?
Yeah, no, there's just lots of training. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Whether it's a pilot, whether it's a mechanic, whether it's kind of you need to go, and I think that. I think the younger generations today is more like, well, no, I want to do something like tomorrow, right? I want to get there tomorrow. I want to run the shop tomorrow. And so, but that, you just kind of get past that, right? You have to kind of try to get people in.
A reality check.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but look, this has been, really, really fun. We're certainly loved kind of hearing your background, and, kind of the things that I learned about you, which was great, that I didn't know. And so that's fun. I would always certainly appreciate all your views on what's going on and all the things that you're working on today, which is super exciting. So want to thank you for kind of taking that time to speak with us and share your career path. I'm sure, our listeners will definitely appreciate that. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. No, it's a lot of fun. It's really great to reconnect with you guys. So, really enjoyed it. And come on out to Long Beach and be gobsmacked, okay? That's an open invitation.
Yeah, absolutely.
He said, in for a gobsmacking. Like, that's so interesting. Madge, thank you so much. I need to put together a podcast of just outtakes, like from the past year and a half.
Yeah, that'd be. I mean, because we probably actually have enough for a show.
Yeah.
When you think about it, they're all about about a minute or so. So it'd be like, it wouldn't be a full hour, but it would still probably be like.
I don't think anybody should listen to that for a full hour.